If you are not tipping 18 to 20% in America, stay home. One person not tipping is never going to affect someone like me who is a volume bartender who does a tip pool and a tip share. However, I will tell you who it's going to affect. Server who does not share tips, who has a 4 to 5 section table. A standard serving section is around 4 to 5 tables, meaning you are responsible for those tables the whole night. You are responsible for flipping them, turning them. The more people you get flipped and turned, the more money you make. Now, let's say somebody comes and sits in your section, them and their whole family. They sit there for an hour and a half ordering food, margaritas, drinks, taking up your time and your space. When the bill comes, they don't tip $1. That server now just lost money and paid for them to dine. Because that server has to do a tip out, meaning they have to pay a bartender a percentage of the alcohol sales sold, they have to pay a food runner a percentage of the food for them to run it to your table, and they have to pay the busser who bussed your table, and sometimes the hostess who sat you. If you are not tipping 18 to 20%, you should not be going out to eat. And if you still decide to, you should tell your server at the beginning of their shift when you first sit down that you are not planning on tipping them, so that they can prioritize which tables they're going to take care of first. Meaning, instead of running for your 37 Diet Cokes and 4 sides of ranch, they can take care of somebody who's actually going to take care of them. There are grocery stores, there are liquor stores, beer distributors. Cook your own food, make your own drinks. Stay home if you're not going to tip.
Tipping is giving money to an employee for good service, but what was once a token of appreciation has become an expectation. Now, refusing to tip or not tipping enough is seen as rude. This has led to opposing debates online, so let's look at some reactions to the state of tipping in America.
Going to America? Here's your tipping guide. Restaurant servers, 15 to 20%. Bartenders, $1 to $2 per drink. Taxi and rideshare drivers, 15 to 20% off the fare. Bellhops and housekeepers, $2 to $5 per day or per bag. Shuttle drivers and tour guides, $2 to $5 per person.
You gave an $8 tip.
What the hell are you looking for? I gave an $8.
Okay, I'm gonna bring the food back. I'm gonna bring the food back. Okay.
You can leave it, thank you.
No, I could speak to you actually.
I'm sorry?
I need to speak to you. I don't think you realize where they're coming from, so I need to speak to you.
Where what's coming from?
Where the food you ordered is coming from. I don't think you realize the distance that it's come from, because then you would never actually have given what you gave. So I think you can come and see face to face. Because I drove 40 minutes and it was extremely far, and I got it to you early. So I don't think you realize where you ordered from.
I don't understand. You
well,
4 minutes from where?
From the restaurant that you ordered from. Do you realize how far it is? Do you realize you ordered from Colmac and you're in Smithtown?
That's a 15-20 minute drive.
It's not. You need to try to drive it. I just drove it. It's 40 minutes. It's 12 and a half miles. So I don't think you realize how far it is.
So why do you accept the pickup if you think it's that far?
They don't let us know how far. So I think you need to adjust your tip. Right.
How much is the tip?
You gave an $8 tip.
What the hell are you looking for? I gave an $8.
Okay, I'm gonna bring the food back. Okay.
Okay. 40 minutes it took her to get it? Okay.
Tipping culture is not out of control. You guys are just assholes. Which is what I used to think until my parents were visiting me and their air conditioning broke. So I drive my dad over to pick up the car, and he comes back with the keys, about to walk over to where the car is, and he's kind of distraught, which is not like him. And he's like, I always tip, but I'm confused. And I'm like, what are you talking about? He's like, I literally just paid, I don't know, $500 to have my car fixed, and then the guy swivels at the car mechanic, swivels the screen around and is like, you want to tip 20%, 25%, 30%, and he's like, I never don't push a button for a percentage to tip, but I didn't tip. Are we tipping car mechanics now? And I was like, no, We're definitely not tipping car mechanics now, at least not that I know about. Yeah, I don't know. I think that's pushing it.
If I have to go up to order, I'm not tipping.
The other day I was at a restaurant, and when I got there, you don't order from a person, you order from like a little kiosk. And then at the end of my order, it asked for a tip, and I was like, I don't really feel like tipping if I have to go up to a kiosk, like someone's not even taking my order from me. And then when we went and sat down, instead of bringing our food to our table when it was ready, they rang a bell and called out our order number. So they didn't even bring it to our table. What in that service deserves a tip? Because I did all the work except for making the food, and I don't think you should be tipped for making food. That's the bare minimum that your job is required.
Tell me why I just got frozen yogurt, which is self-serve. You do it all yourself. And at the end, there was a tipping screen. For what? Like, what are you talking about? What? Am I tipping you for just simply existing and like being present at your job? It's so weird. I was a server for many years, so I completely understand tipping culture and the fact that you should tip people providing you a service. Why? Please. I always tip every single time there is like a screen that pops up asking for a tip. I give a tip. That is just getting absolutely outrageous. And I think what makes me the most mad is it just gives companies an excuse to like not pay their employees well because they rely on tips. If it's not a job where they're actually performing a service, pay your employees a fair wage instead. How about that? Rocket science.
There is no freaking way. I just went to go get froyo, where you make it yourself. Okay, I'm sitting there with my little bowl, and I put my ice cream in, and then I move over to my favorite section, the toppings, okay? And I put in some chocolate-covered strawberries, some brownies, and then I move over to the little section where you have to weigh your ice cream, and it gives you the total. And not gonna lie, y'all, that was some expensive froyo. But anything to make my stomach happy, of course. And so I take out my wallet, pull out my card, and I'm tapping it. And it's not working. So I was like, okay, maybe I can swipe it. I swipe it and it's still not going through. And I was low-key getting embarrassed because like there's people behind me. And the worker comes up to me and he's like, it's not going through because it's asking you to tip. I was like, oh. And he was like, press the bottom right corner. And I was like, the no tip? And he goes, yeah, we don't get those tips anyway. The owner keeps them. If we don't get paid enough. I was like, oh, but I'm just here for my froyo, okay? But like, I think it's crazy that these self-serve places are asking you to tip and the owners are keeping it. Like, that makes no sense at all.
So today, my table only tipped me $2 on $122 because...
Baby, I know that you're pissed that they only tipped you a really little amount, but tipping's optional. And of course, if you go to another country and you visit, you want to respect their rules and their way of culture and life. The thing is, however, I don't think that many Europeans know that waiters and waitresses get paid such little wages in the US. They probably thought that you was getting paid $7, $8, $9 an hour. Even though you're right, you do get paid $2 an hour, which again is not fair for you. But that's not their problem. That's the US government's problem. And you can't expect people from other countries to come to the States and give you a big tip. Personally, I would tip big because I know that you guys get paid very little there. But not a lot of people know that. In Europe, waiters and servers get paid a decent wage, and a 12.5% service charge is always added to the end of the bill. The 12.5% service charge is optional, and most of the time people keep it on if you give good service, but sometimes good service doesn't happen and they ask to have it taken off. It happened to me the other day. Not because I was a bad waiter, but because I was the only waiter on the floor and serving, like 100, 200 customers, and things were coming out slow because I was the only person there available. It's not my fault. And when they asked for the service charge to be removed, I did explain to them that I was the only waiter on the floor, but they didn't seem to care. They still wanted it removed. And that's fair enough. If they want the service charge removed, I'm not going to hold a grudge against them for it. I'll just remove it for them. Unfortunately, I was just left in that night because half of my employees didn't turn up or they called in sick. The point is, yes, this is your way of making a living at the minute. And of course, you're going to be disappointed that you've only got a very small tip. But you can't take it personally, and you can't be disappointed if it's someone from another country who doesn't know anything about their tipping culture.
If you don't have money to tip your server and you go out to eat and don't tip your server, I have zero respect for you. I am a server making 5 something an hour, and I live off of your tip. I don't care how many tables I have, how busy I look. I don't care. 9 times out of 10, I'm not making the money that you think I'm making. And it's crazy because there's so many servers out there, and there's no awareness for this, it feels like. Like, the server industry does not get enough credit for how hard this is. It is not easy. It's back-breaking work. I work in a bar and grill, and I love my job, don't get me wrong, and I'm good at what I do. But it is so degrading to get stiffed, to work so hard, to smile at a table with a big smile on my face despite how stressed I am, and give you good service, and then get no tip. Like, I didn't just work myself for you. There are good days, and there are bad days, and today is a bad day, and I think that the service industry needs better, pay. Because lately society's just not getting it.
A lady came into my restaurant today and asked me if it was okay if she didn't tip, and I said, yeah, that's fine, it's not mandatory. And she said, oh, so you're not one of those servers that's going to give me a big stink about not tipping? And I said, no, ma'am, it's fine, it evens out in the end. And she said, oh, really? And I said, yeah, it's not mandatory, and other people will tip, and some people tip more than others, and it evens out for me. I just would prefer that my tables do tip. And she said, oh, so you prefer, okay, why is that? And I had to explain this whole thing of how if you don't tip, servers still have to pay money on your bill, and you are actually costing us money. And I feel like no one had actually explained this to her before, and she did end up tipping. She gave me 10%, which I was like, great, because that covers my tip out. But I'm just wondering, like, do people just not know unless they work in the service industry? Do people just not know that if you don't tip, you cost your servers money?
The other week, I got Botox in my forehead. It's like a 20-minute long appointment for $350, and then they asked, how much do you want to tip? I was like, excuse me? What? I've gotten Botox before. I've never been asked to tip on that. I just think this is where I draw the line, because I know Botox, like the wholesale cost, has got to be nothing compared to what you pay. I mean, anything medical like that, it's always just so inflated. And these are nurses, so they should be getting paid a pretty good wage. It's not a server job where they're getting paid below minimum wage, so I think they should not be relying on tips. I think this is where I draw the line personally.
I went shopping for my wedding dress like a week and a half ago, and I ended up finding my dress at the first store that I went to. When I went to go pay, they flipped their little iPad around and it asked for a tip. When I tell you, like, I full on froze, I stood there, and I think they saw, like, the blood leave my body. I did not expect to have to, like, tip buying a wedding dress. And mind you, the store was empty. Like, it was me, my best friend, and then the 3 people that worked there. I'm just kind of, like, standing there trying to do math in my head, because the dress is already expensive, right? And then, like, a 10% on, like, a $1,500, $2,000 dress is, like, another $200. And if the dress is even more, you're paying a couple $100, which I guess if you can afford, like, a $10,000 dress, maybe a tip isn't that big of a problem, but most people really can't. Also, if you guys think your stylist deserves a tip, why don't you just give her commission? Have any other brides ever tipped when they bought their wedding dress?
Okay, this tipping culture is getting out of control. Why am I being asked to tip a barista at Starbucks? And I get it. You guys are going to say, well, it's optional. Like, you don't have to do it if you don't want to. Like, if you're cheap, just say that. First of all, I am not cheap, okay? I am all about tipping, you know, the waitresses, you know, the runners. Like, I get it. Get your hustle on. But my thing is, I mean, that's something that we've always done, right? The tipping culture has always been there when it comes to restaurants and things like that. But for a simple Starbucks, like, it never used to be like that, okay? And now I see all these companies just asking for a tip. Like, I went into a boba spot and the girl with the iPad was like, oh, would you like to leave a tip? Like, babes, really? Like, you're really gonna tell me when there's people behind? Honestly, at this point, I don't even feel ashamed anymore. I just simply press hard no. Like, I make it known, and I'm like, no. I was at Goodwill and they were like, would you like to donate? No, because that's just going to be a tax write-off. But anyway, let's get back to the point here. I'm just so confused because I was at Susie's Cakes the other day buying some cupcakes for Valentine, and not only did they charge me a 3% for the health
like employee health, which I get it. It was only like $1, but that's not the point. Why should the customer, the consumer, have to pay for something that the employer should be paying? For example, when I used to be a bank teller, okay, because that's like the only retail job I've really done. Well, I worked the Hollister for like 2 weeks, but besides the point. I used to do a lot of work. I'm talking about cashing checks, making deposits, counting a large sum amount of bills, because I was a merchant teller at one point. When I became a banker, I was opening up business accounts. I was doing home loans. I was doing mortgages. I was doing auto loans, sending wire transfers. I mean, things that are tedious, complex, things that take time. And never did I get a tip or a commission. I mean, if it's a sales job, yes. But if I'm making a large sum deposit, I'm not getting tipped for counting $1,000 in singles from a vending machine. Am I supposed to be getting tipped? Shouldn't we be tipping the tellers? Shouldn't we be tipping the people at McDonald's? Which, trust me, I'm already hearing that people are also asking for tips at those jobs, when in reality, it's the employers that should be paying for the employees to have a sustainable, like, living wage. Why are we pressuring all the consumers to be tipping? Like, I literally left Starbucks seconds, okay? Within seconds, I was already getting a notification on my Starbucks app saying, oh, view your receipt, you know, because I purchased my coffee. And then it said, oh, there's still time to tip. Babe, if I didn't tip at the POS inside of the Starbucks, I'm not going to tip online. And you need to pay them a sustainable wage.
Gratuity is not a tip to your server. We don't own the gratuity. Most restaurants/lounges take half or sometimes all of it. The other half that remains is normally pooled and split amongst everybody that worked that shift. Grat is grat. A tip is a tip. What don't be clicking? Well, to me, what's not clicking is how you intentionally take a job that you know pays you $2.17 an hour, and that you have to rely on the rest of your income by begging for charity from strangers. Now, when I go out to eat at like sit down restaurants, I always tip. I was just raised to, give a proper tip. But y'all are really getting out of hand. First of all, gratuity is a tip. Whoever told you that, you need to go fight them. Your job is stealing from you. You got 99 problems and I'm not one of them. It's not the customer, it's you and your employer. Look, we try to tip y'all. We try to make things work. But y'all just keep demanding more and more and more and more and more. And y'all are asking us as customers for things that we just can't give you. We're pouring from an empty cup already. You work at a restaurant. You know where all the sharp objects are. Go grab some of them and demand that your employer pay you a proper salary. You gotta split tips and you acting like that's my problem. I didn't do that to you. Get a new job. Unionize.
Hey, what are you doing? Hey, man, bring my shit back.
You do not need to order food if you cannot tip $5. That doesn't make any sense to me. These drivers are only making between $2.50 to $4 from DoorDash, even if you paid a $12 delivery fee. The rest of the money that we make is from tips. So if you ever have an order and you're like, damn, why is nobody picking up this order? It's because we are seeing that the ride's coming in for $2.50 and none of us are hurting that bad. We are not going to gamble that you're not going to tip. We're going to drive 20 minutes on the other side of town for $2.50. If it's a $4 ride, no one's going to do that because chances are DoorDash paid us $2.50 and you left $1.50. We're not hurting for $4. So you better tip. And it should be pre-order. That should just make sense to me. I don't understand, but I get like, you're like, well, if I get my food, they miss the orders. It should be based on, okay, well, then make sure you tip after so that we're not burned as drivers because I'm denying any ride under $4. Like, that doesn't make any sense to me. And the same goes for when you're going out to eat because I was a server for 7 years. Why the did you just go spend $30 if you can't leave $5? I'm not talking about you went up to a food truck and they just flipped the screen behind and then they call your name and you grab the food from a bag. I'm talking about you went out to eat, got a whole service from somebody, got your drinks, your food, your to-go boxes, your bags, your check, your change, everything, and you're biting your nails at $5? No. You guys need to just do better, for real.
Guys, tipping culture is insane. I went to buy one singular macaroon, £1.70. I thought not bad. I went to tap my card, £1, £2.50, £5 for a tip. I looked at him, I was like, you can't be serious. Like, I'm not tipping you, mate. All you did was hand it over to me. I didn't even ask you a question or anything. So I take no thank you. And he literally rolled his eyes and scoffed at me. Bro, like, let's be real for a second. Why do you feel so entitled for a tip? We're in the UK, first of all. You didn't do anything, second of all. And, like, yeah, I think we should just calm down. Like, let's just, you know, come back to earth. I know we're in a cost of living crisis, but I am also in that crisis with you.
Reaction time. This edition is grad night.
Do servers ever get tired of complaining about the tips that they get? You know you're not entitled to any of the tips. Like, your tip out could be 0. Tipping is customary, it's not required. 20 to 25% plus in a tip means you are doing an outstanding job. It does not mean that you're simply taking the customer's order, dropping off their food, and giving them their check. If that's all you're doing for your customers, no, you don't deserve a 20 to 25% plus tip. Sorry. Honestly, I blame COVID because remember during COVID, we were expecting very little from our servers, but we were tipping out of really just pity, really high amounts. I feel like this is where the entitlement of tips really came from. And I really think that servers should just be thankful that they get a 5% tip or a 10% tip or a 15% tip. Like, that means that the customer said, hey, here's the amount on my bill. I feel like I want to give you additional money to say thank you. Customers' thank yous are met with servers just showing the receipt and complaining that they didn't get exactly 20%. Like, this was a $10 on a $100 bill. And she like rates this like a 4 out of 10.
At the risk of being called broke, I gotta ask, can we all admit that this tippet has gotten out of control? And don't get me wrong, restaurants, I get it. Waitresses, waiters, I know y'all only making about 45 cents an hour. And that's crazy. So I get it. The minimum I tip is about 15%, and I could tip up to 100% of the bill. It just depends on how I'm feeling. The drunker I am, the more I'm finna tip. You understand me? But if I'm placing an order online for some food and you're making me pay online, like there's no option for me to pay at pickup, don't ask me for the tip. I ain't even seen the food yet. What? I haven't even seen the food. I don't know what's going on with the food. I could get there and it looked like trash and I'm already tipped 20%. You got to be kidding. What? And not to mention you folks that be providing services. I just seen this video. This girl went to go get a massage. They asked her to pay for the massage before she got the massage, and then asked for a tip before she got the massage, and then got mad when she tipped like 10%. What? That's crazy. What be on y'all's mental for real? Why not just increase your, if you want the tip that bad, increase your prices.
I did not tip my server last night. Here's why. I'm a firm believer if you can afford to go out to eat, you can afford to tip. However, if the service sucks, you shouldn't be required to tip. I think for the longest time I would tip regardless of how they treated me. But now that I can barely afford to go out to eat, I'm not gonna pay extra for service that sucks. You know, I was a server for a while and I got screwed over time and time again, and I was good at my job. I was great with people. I always had their food out as soon as it was ready, and I would get screwed over all the time and I'd be really upset. There were those select few tables that, you know, sometimes I'd forget about because we were busy and stuff, and they wouldn't tip me as much, and I would not hold them against it. I know servers rely on tips for, like, you know, their money, because I know they get paid like half as much as everybody else does, but it's also your customers' money. If you don't treat them with respect, if you don't treat them like they're a top priority, they shouldn't have to pay you extra. And I think now that I've actually been a server and I know what to like look for, kind of hold people to a higher standard, because I'm like, you should be able to do that easy peasy. You should be able to fill my drinks when they're getting empty. You should be able to greet me within literally 30 seconds if there's nobody around. So last night, me and Aiden went to Buffalo Wild Wings. The first time we had horrible service, so we didn't really want to go back, but we had a gift card, so we went anyway. We ended up spending $20, and I had a $10 bill that I was ready to give up and ready to tip her with. I find myself lately going into sit-down restaurants and just being absolutely disappointed. These servers get away with just treating us like, and I'm not going to be rewarding them by giving them money that I barely have myself. The server, she was nice, but she wasn't going like above and beyond to, you know, treat us like her top priority. This happened to us last time too. Our server isn't the one who brought out our food. We've been there for probably 30 minutes and we've only seen our server one time. Second of all, we didn't get silverware until 10 minutes after we already had our food, so we had like a bunch of like boneless wings sitting in front of us that we couldn't eat because we didn't have silverware. So by the time we got the silverware, our food was cold. And then, you know, wings are spicy fancy, so you kind of chug your water. And you'd think you'd know that working at a wing restaurant. So me and Aiden just went without like water in our drinks for most of the time that we were there because she never refilled our drinks. My mouth was on fire. And it's like every time this happens, which it doesn't happen very often, but when it does, I literally feel so guilty. But like, I shouldn't. Like, I literally go in my car convincing myself that like what I did was okay. But it's like, if you're a good server, you'll get good money. Like I said, we spent $20 there and I was gonna give her $10. And another thing, I feel like this is a pretty big controversial topic. I get heated myself. I genuinely think even if you do like the bare minimum as a server, just fill their drinks, give them their food, be with them, you get tipped. But if you only see your server once at the beginning and once at the end, why? You know, I wanted to tip the guy who brought out our food because he did more than what our server did.
When you go to the USA and you're a tourist and you're not used to tipping, but then you go to a restaurant and then you see the little tip line, if you put $0.00, a portion of that meal is going to be taken out of the server's paycheck. I know it sounds fake and I know it's not fair, but it's true. Do I think that America needs a little bit of reform, especially when it comes to our tipping culture? Yes. Do I think it's getting out of control? Yes. But when you're a tourist, it's not your job to be like, I'm not gonna tip because it's my form of protest. If there comes reform, it has to come from the waitresses and the waiters themselves, but that's not up to you. You don't get to just say, no, I refuse to participate, because what you're doing is you're over your servers who are just working, and oftentimes servers live paycheck to paycheck. I saw a story on here of like a person, it was like a 20 top, which means 20 people. She was serving 20 people and it was a $400 check and they only tipped like $25. She had to give like $24 to the pool of like hosts, cooks, bussers, and she made $1 off of a $400 tab. Do you know how much the restaurant pays us outside of tips? I think at Texas Roadhouse where I worked, I think I made like $2 an hour. So when you choose to tip $0.00, it's not the cute little form of protest that you think it is. You're literally denying your server who's waiting on your beck and call. You're denying them a meal or a tank of gas. It's important that you put aside your personal beliefs about tipping and actually just support the people who are serving you, because you're only in the USA for a couple weeks. You can't make fundamental change. All you're doing is taking money from servers, literally taking money from servers. I know it sucks. I know it's not fun, but if you can't afford to tip, then don't go out to eat. That's just the fact of the matter in the USA. I'm sorry if you don't like it, but when you visit a country, you need to conform to the country's customs. People always tell us that when we go abroad, so it's only fair that you guys would respect it in return.
Tipping culture was by far the scariest thing about going to Canada as an Australian, because we don't do that here. We did our best the whole time we were there to give a tip that we felt the server deserved. It is genuinely the most awkward experience ever. Having someone stand there and watch me while I write down my tip for them is just so uncomfortable. It kind of makes me feel like the entire service they gave me was so ingenuine. I feel like some people were so rude about it. When we were at the airport coming home, we didn't have much Canadian money left. We wanted to get rid of it so we didn't get stuck with anything going home. We decided to have breakfast at this little cafe and we both ordered our meals. Before we were about to pay, my boyfriend grabbed an iced coffee bottle from their fridge. We asked for the bill and went to pay, but our card declined because we didn't quite have enough money on it. So we had to put back the iced coffee and then we tapped our card again and it worked. The thing is though, we didn't leave a tip because our card had already declined and there wasn't enough money to leave a tip. Keeping in mind, all our server had done was take our order, give us our food and bring us the bill. There was someone else who cleared our plates and checked on us throughout the service. As we were walking away, our server turned around to her co-worker and was like, oh, that's the third time that's happened today. Third time. I'm assuming in response to us not tipping. Honestly, be mad about it all you want, but at least wait till we're out of earshot. I also feel like that's so rude considering our card declined and we had to take something off of our bill. The thing is, I have seen a lot of videos from Americans saying that if you can afford to go out to eat, you can afford to tip. I feel like the situation's a little different when you're in an airport and lots of people are going to be trying to get rid of the cash or money they have. I want to know, if you come from a tipping culture, was that our bad or was that the server's bad? Honestly, tipping feels wrong enough to me already, especially when people are expecting a tip like that.
And you go out to eat and don't tip your server, I have zero respect for you.
Don't paint me out to be the villain here because I'm not. I'm just going to share my opinion. I've never been a server, but I never would because I know the nonsense that they have to deal with on a daily basis and I know I cannot manage it. I automatically respect someone who was or is a server. However, we need to stop blaming the customers and calling them cheap and stingy just because they don't tip, because tipping is not mandatory. It is a choice. 98% of the time when I go out to eat, I tip because my service is at least good. It just has to be good in order for you to get a tip. If your service is bad to the point where I don't want to come back, I'm not giving you a tip. But it is not the customer's job to pay your wage. We need to be taking this up with companies who are not paying their staff enough money. Tipping culture has gone insane in America. A lot of places nowadays add the gratuity to your receipt, so you don't even have the choice to choose how much you want to tip if you want to tip. Blame the wage makers, not the customers.